Hello and welcome to everyone across the nation joining today's workshop on how to add personnel records. This workshop focuses on using CASAS eTests Online together with TOPS Pro Enterprise Online for adding administrators and teachers to your online database. This function is available with both basic and enhanced access. In other words, no TOPS Pro Enterprise license is required. Personnel records can be added by the TE Enhanced or ET Basic user at your agency. In other words, this is generally the data manager in your managing your online database. Now, folks, this is one of 23 complimentary CASAS Online implementation workshops. You are not expected to attend all 23 workshops as indicated by the Citrix online system. This is a training room set up to conduct all workshops. We highly recommend attending as many as possible to learn about best practices, ask questions, and become confident in using the online system. This week, Tuesday and Wednesday, actually wraps up, and I'll just highlight these workshops here. These 4 workshops, the 2 for today and the 2 for tomorrow, wrap up the 6th set of 23 implementation workshops, and then we begin a repeat of all 23 workshops starting on Thursday with an implementation overview and using the online system to allow students to practice taking a CASAS web-based test. So if you missed any of these topics listed that make up a complete 23 sets of or 23 topics in a set, feel free to register and join us in any of those additional workshops. And also please recommend any staff members to also join in these workshops. Online help documentation is available on our website under Training and Support. ET for eTest help documentation and TE for TOPS Pro Enterprise help documentation. TOPS Pro Enterprise, as many of you have come to know, is the data management application of the online system, whereas eTest Online is solely for the purpose of administering CASAS web-based tests. You will want to be sure and bookmark these as your electronic go-to resources, particularly the CASAS eTest Online Guide, for which provides the information covered in these workshops. Today's workshop will cover section 8.7 in the CASAS eTest Online Guide. This guide is updated annually as we prepare for the National Summer Institute. We extend an invitation to all of you to attend the 2015 CASAS National Summer Institute. There is information on our website. If you go to the home page, there is a quick shortcut to the Summer Institute right here, and you can read all about it. We encourage you to come. It's a wonderful opportunity. As mentioned, this workshop covers information from section 8.7 in the CASAS eTest Online Guide. This is under a data management section, which provides a step-by-step tutorial on how to add a personnel record. Now, folks, there are many pieces to a personnel record, which includes, first of all, a registration, and then added to that personnel record is a functional role. This is what assigns teachers to classes and produces their name on a class-generated report. There is also the opportunity for you to track their employment record as well as professional status. Now, some organizations that are required to report to NRS for accountability of being part of the WIA Title I or Title II funding. Generally, this is part of a requirement to submit that type of information, and TOPS Pro Enterprise Online is capable of reporting that type of information. Now, today's workshop will be using the simulation server, but before we get started, I want to be sure that all of you are aware of the difference between the production server and I'm entering that URL in the chat box compared to the simulation server. And let me put that URL in the chat box there. The production server, as you can see, these look identical. Simulation server, production server. The production server is where you will be producing live data. This is the etestonline.org URL is the main domain name address that you will use when your agency is set up with an online database. And as mentioned, this is referred to as the production server. The simulation server, which is the server we will be using for today's workshop, is available to anyone wanting to experiment and explore our online system without risk of compromising your live data on the production server. These are two completely separate servers. However, these are two identical applications. You will find information on how to access the simulation server on our website under Training and Support, eTest Help Documentation, Getting Started. There is a wealth of information here, as you can see, documents to download as well as additional links below to help you get started. And there, one of the documents specifically is for directions on how to access the simulation server. All right, folks, with that, we'll go ahead and get into today's workshop. Let's go back to the guide here. Now, folks, we highly recommend that you give teachers access to TOPS Pro Enterprise to manage their classes, such as manage class enrollment, add instructional hours for their students or record instructional hours, and generate reports for their own class, and to use test results to inform instruction. In order to do that, a teacher must be given a user account in the online system. So before I demonstrate how to add a personnel record, let's launch TOPS Pro Enterprise Online. And as many of you have come to know, especially if you've been with us in a few workshops on TOPS Pro Enterprise, there are three ways to access Enterprise, either through TE Client, clicking on this link, which will open up the application, clicking on an icon that is placed on your desktop by default when you first install a client of TOPS Pro Enterprise. Or if you have Windows open, such as I often do, then you can move that shortcut down into the system tray. And I'm pointing here at the bottom of my computer monitor. There, I put a shortcut of the TE icon in my system tray as I build my own system tray of applications that I frequently have open throughout the day. So I'm going to click on TE, the TE icon, to launch the application. Now, the simulation server has generic user accounts for administrators, coordinators, proctors, and teachers. When TOPS Pro Enterprise launches, please be sure that you are connecting to the appropriate server. In this case, we are going to connect to the simulation server. The agency ID for Rolling Hills Adult School is 4908. And I'll first show you an administrator account here with a password of simply admin. We'll give the application a moment to connect. And folks, I encourage you to ask questions along the way. I will do my best to monitor the chat box and address your questions. So don't feel as though you have to hold off any questions till the end. And let's hope we connect. I will go ahead and explain that if you are an organization that would like, maybe not at the moment, but would like to have your teachers access Enterprise in essentially a read-only access, with the exception of managing their own class if that's what you decide to enable for their access rights. But a teacher would need both a user account and a personnel registration. A user account solely that gives them the credentials to access the online system, and then the personnel registration that attaches them to the class. Now, folks, I do need to mention that we have been experiencing heavy demand or heavy load on our online servers this morning. And so you may be experiencing some latency issues, and we sincerely apologize for that. We are addressing that issue at the very moment and working very quickly to resolve. So if we don't get connected, officially get connected, then we will go to the written document, and I will explain that document. Washington and Florida are okay. Yeah, those of you, let's see, let me just double check here. We have different servers throughout the, for different states, and yeah, I don't see any of you that are from Florida or Washington. I know that Florida and Washington are not currently experiencing latency issues. All right, folks, I don't want to waste your time, so what I'm going to do is actually pop over to the CASAS test document here and explain this document to show the connection or the linkage between user accounts and the personnel registration. So what I would otherwise demonstrate live in the Enterprise application, which we still cannot connect to, I'll keep popping back to see if we can connect, is that from the organization menu that you see here at the top, and actually I'm going to put my little spotlight here to draw your attention to my cursor. So from the organization menu, select Personnel Registration. A registration record must exist before any child records can be added. We've talked about a parent-child relationship with regards to records in the online database. So the personnel registration would be the parent record, and then employment records, functional roles, and professional status or child records as they relate directly to the personnel member by a unique ID number. From the, let's see, whoops. Oh, my cursor, you know what, I don't think I'll be able to use that spotlight because it takes away my normal mouse functions there. So let's go back here. All right. When you click on personnel registration, a personnel lister opens. So if you have any personnel members records already in your database, there would be a list that would display. If you are adding a new personnel member, and this could be a teacher or administrator, click the New button to open up the window to a new record. It will be a split record, and over to the right side of the record, for the personnel member, click Link with Existing User. And this is key, folks. So if and it doesn't have to be at this moment in time that you make that decision, but if, let's say, either at this moment or in the near future or later future that you would like to see or your teachers actively using TOPS Pro Enterprise Online, then the recommendation is to first add a user account for that personnel member. And there are directions for adding user accounts in the CASAS eTest Online Guide. So follow that information. And then if you do not need to activate that user account at the time, just simply click disable that account until such a point in time you will grant access. So with that user account already existing in the database will allow you to link that user account with a personnel record. And that's what this linking function is here. So when you check that, that will autofill information for you with regards to the user, and we'll go down below to see that information. The next field is to identify the container at which that personnel record should be applied. Now, the recommendation actually is at the parent level, in other words, the top level of your hierarchical structure of your online database. In this case, it would be Rolling Hills, and then you have these site locations. Adding a personnel record at the parent level, in other words, at the agency level, Rolling Hills Adult School, allows you to link that personnel member to any class at any site location. So that gives you the maximum flexibility. Otherwise, if you select a site-based container, such as North Campus or East Campus, then that personnel record would only be available at that site location. So that makes it a little bit more restrictive. Okay, so be sure to add the container. And if a user account does not exist for which to link the personnel members, skip to number 5. But we're going to go ahead and continue with number 4, assuming that the user account already exists. So we are going to select the user from the drop-down list of accounts. So the next field would be this right here. Let's just pop over to Enterprise, see if we connected. Okay, we'll check back with that in just a moment. You can either type to search or select from a lister and then pick that user account, which as you can see highlighted here, we're picking Mary Smith. Now this would seemingly be repeating. However, this is trailing from this information up here. So otherwise you would skip 4 if the user account did not pre-exist. If the user account does not pre-exist, then continue to number 5 here. Enter the personnel identification. So what you see here in this image, and it's very small, the user account, notice it is auto-filled right here with that user account username, which typically is the email address. Enter in a personnel ID, and this user account name, as well as the last name and first name of that existing user account, auto-populated this information. So that's what this here means. If linked with an existing user account, this information will populate. All you have to do is enter the personnel ID and then either add or correct information, such as if you want to add a middle name or correct any of that, the last and first name. If not linked with an existing user account, you need to enter in the all of the personnel identification information, such as a user account, personnel ID, title, and so forth. It is possible that a personnel registration record can exist before the user account. So if you go the opposite direction, at the moment in time you are adding a user account for an existing personnel member, you have another opportunity from the user account side to link to the personnel registration. But the recommended approach is to have the user account existing first and then add the personnel registration. Once that information is entered, save the record and review the saved personnel registration. You can click the editing icon to edit any of that saved information. Let's see if okay, here we go. Okay, and here is Rolling Hills Adult School, and here are personnel registration records already existing. And so I mentioned clicking new. I won't repeat this information, but once I'll just double click on this record for an example. Once the personnel registration record is saved, it'll look similar to this. That opens now or adds the navigator on the side to where you then add the functional role for that teacher. This is what directly connects them to a class. So the functional role, you click new. This information is auto-filled. Now this is an example of a user or a personnel registration at a site. So the container is specifically the site as compared to the agency level. The personnel information is auto-filled as well. Select the container associations for this rule. So the assumption is that you are assigning the teacher to a class at the same campus. Now that campus could have sub-sites. Now let's see, but you can, it seems a little bit confusing at this point, you can create a functional role at another campus. And depending on the classes that exist at the campus, that's what displays here. Notice if you change the campus, the selection of classes change, but you can, you do have the opportunity to assign them to a class at another site. My recommendation is have the personnel registration at the agency level, and that would be, in my opinion, a lot less confusing. Now, by default, the personnel registration or the functional role, defaults to teacher. It's assumed that you are assigning a teacher to the class. This is why you've added the class. There are administrators and scores. We have written prompt scoring as well as problem solving and critical thinking scoring. The start and end dates should generally align with the start and end dates of a class. And I'm just selecting dates at random here, but let's assume that these are the start and end dates that align with this class. And then save that record. So now you have a functional role for this teacher. And then Gladys, after selecting the server and the agency for simulations, how do you get a user and password to use the e-test simulation on Rolling Hills Adult School? That information is on our website on that simulation server document, which I actually am updating, and I hope to have swapped out with the existing one online. Now, after the functional role is added, you do have the opportunity to add personnel employment. This is the type of information that is collected for personnel employment, and taking the approach to add this information through the personnel record itself is to your benefit because a lot of the information is auto-filled. And this is where you would select the employment type and the job type. These indicators generally align with NRS federal reporting. Professional status. Then you can also add professional status, with which this is the type of information that can be entered for that record. So that's a demonstration of manually adding a personnel registration record. And any classes, for example, this Teresa here, I'll just double click into her record again, a functional role. So we assigned Teresa to this class 110 at the Southwest campus. So if I generated a report, any report here, and selected the Southwest campus, this teacher's name would appear on a report for class 110 low beginning at the Southwest campus. This teacher also, let's see, was the teacher's account linked? I can't remember now. Teresa Reen. Let's go to users. These are examples of all the user accounts in the online database. We have 51 administrator accounts, as you see here, which grants you full access To TOPS Pro Enterprise Online, all of the administrator accounts are in what's called the TE Enhanced Access group, and all administrator accounts also have coordinator and proctor access to CASAS eTest Online. The sample coordinator accounts can only perform coordinator duties in CASAS eTest Online, and they have coordinator access to TOPS Pro Enterprise Online. The same holds true with the proctor accounts. Proctors have proctor access to eTest and limited access to TE in a proctor role. We also have teacher accounts here. Now this, which has no access to CASAS eTest Online and only has access to TOPS Pro Enterprise Online. We have examples of enhanced access for teachers as well as basic access for teachers. Enhanced access grants access to class instances. So let's go back to this Teresa, for example. This Teresa Reen. Let's see, and well, she doesn't have a user account, I can tell you that just right off. But if we put, say, Teresa Reen in one of these access groups, well, she would need a user account in order to be associated with one of these access groups. So what I'm going to do actually is just quickly disconnect for just a moment and sign on with an example teacher. Whoops, if I spell it correctly here. In a nutshell, folks, those sample user accounts, administrator, coordinator, proctor, or teacher, simply use one of those titles and just add a number, any number between 1 and 50, or including 1 and 50. So select your favorite number, add it to the end with @rollinghillsadultschool.org, RHAS.org. And then the password for teacher accounts is simply teacher. The password for coordinators is coordinator. For proctor, it's proctor. For administrator, it's admin, ADMIN. And they're all lowercase, so the password is case sensitive. So let's go ahead and connect so you have an idea of what a teacher account looks like. Notice the teacher has no access to records. That's intentional, as well as no access to tools. They don't need access to tools. They have access to limited reports. You don't want to overwhelm your teachers. They have enough work to do. But we felt that these were the most common reports that teachers would access. And any of these type of reports in test results, as well as state reports. This is a great report combining learning gains and a student test summary report combined. There's a test history summary report right there. So you get 2 reports in one. And folks, even if you are an agency not in California, you still have access to this right here. Okay, now let's go to the organization menu. Notice how limited it is. And this is to direct, to lead teachers directly to where you want them to go. So from the organization menu, classes, instances. It's an instance of their class occurring in the program year for which they would be granted access. Now I'm just role playing here. Let's say this teacher is at, we'll just say North Campus, and let's say this is the teacher's class. We would have access to that class. Here is the class information here. We can record instructional hours for students enrolled in our class, as well as we can enroll students in our class by clicking the new. We can manage the enrollment by indicating the class status, and we'll talk about class enrollments and instructional hours in tomorrow's workshop. Now, what I want to do in the very limited time that we have left is change my role quickly to administrator, because you saw me demonstrate how to add personnel registration manually. I want to quickly show you how to add several personnel registrations as well as user accounts simultaneously through the third-party import wizard. We have an import template, folks, for which I am happy to share. Let me go into that information here. And so we have all of these type of import records. I know this is very small on your screen. And I'm going to just quickly, and if you can stay with me for about 5 more minutes, folks, trust me, it'll be worth it. We have teacher records here. This is a fillable template with directions on the first page. The template information is on the second page. If you have the opportunity to cut and paste from and to populate this information or manually populate this information, manually. Either way, and I just have 2 examples here, a John Smith and a Mary Smith. And so part of the directions is to save this information, and I'm going to save this to my desktop as a importable file, which specifically is a CSV, comma delimited file, CSV, and save that file. And this is okay if you get these messages, just you want to keep it in that format. Now it is important to close this template, so you're going to go through this save function one more time before you ultimately close that record. That's key. The record has to be closed before you can import it. Now, you can acquire that importable file directly from a third-party system, and we have a document called Exchanging Data with Third-Party Systems. This is available in TOPS Pro Enterprise Help Documentation under Data Exchange, so you can locate that information. But what this import does, whether you are getting that information directly from a registration system or you manually populated a template, it does quite a lot of work. It takes out a lot of manual processes. It creates the personal registration. It links it with a user account. And then in the next workshop, when we add classes, that will automatically attach the functional role of the teacher to that class. So just real quick, in the limited time we have left, I'm going to demonstrate teacher records from a third-party system. Teacher records have to exist in your system before you can attach them to a class or associate them with a class. So select teacher records from a third-party system. Next, we specify the importable file type as CSV. We browse and select that import template. We click Next. Create personnel records at the agency level. This is recommended. So this is a default. I would keep it there. I would just keep these defaults here. Folks, there is detailed information here that I don't have time to explain, but please, read this. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask us. Now let me go ahead and click Next, and this is going to begin the import. 2 records have been found to be valid. That's good news. It gives you TOPS Pro Enterprise still gives you the opportunity to edit this information if needed, and you can see all of the information that it's picking up from the import template here. Okay, and if I click Next and Next again, and Finish, then I can go over here to Organization, Personnel, Registration, and you can see the 2 import records that I just imported for those teachers, as well as, and I'll just double click on John Smith as an example. Now, he doesn't have a functional role because we haven't assigned him to a class. So in the next workshop, we'll import classes. And I didn't add personnel or employment or professional status, just simply to get the registration there. Now, folks, what happened here is that I kind of went against my recommendation of having the personnel registration or the user account existing first. And had I have had the user account existing first, well, actually, it did. I'm sorry. Forgive me for that. It did add the name. But the user account here, what it did is it took on the personnel ID from the import process. And we do recommend that you use email addresses as personnel IDs. So you can simply edit that information. You edit the user account information, and I'll just demonstrate this here. I'm only, oops, email address. Okay, I have to fill in the email address here to save this record. So now when I refresh this information, it's, here, let's just filter on John to bring his record up. Notice now his user account name, it follows the same convention that we are recommending, as well as his personnel registration when I refresh this screen. Now notice here, it did simultaneously edit his personnel registration. And the reason I demonstrated it in that way is generally this personnel registration user account here would otherwise not be editable. So edit through the user account. Folks, I apologize for the delivery of this session. It didn't quite go as planned, but please review, this session. I will be posting recordings of all of these workshops in this set of 23 workshops. I will be posting that for your viewing in our online training site. And so I'll send out notification when those recordings are there. And these are the live recordings, so they are totally uncut, live as if you were attending at that very moment. So let's see, and I had a couple of questions. Do we use adding personnel just for teachers? You can, good question, Victoria. You can use personnel for administrators. A personnel registration is applicable to, actually here it's for the functional role here. Let's just go into John's, not user here. Let's go into John Smith for just a minute. That's his. Functional roles can be applied to administrators as well as teachers. And scores have to do with scoring the written prompt or the WSCS problem solving or critical thinking. As well as what you saw here on the personnel registration, either professional employment or professional status allows you, there's professional status there. Let's go into personnel employment here. It gives you this type of, also the employment type you can specify. And this information, folks, is covered in this step-by-step tutorial that I started off with. So here it gives a discussion on the functional roles. Here it gives a discussion on employment records here, and then as well as professional status here. So this gives you a lot of detail, and this is in the guide in section 8.7. User accounts are auto-linked to personnel registrations and vice versa, and it's the functional role that identifies a teacher per class. Yes, and I'll go ahead and send the templates to you, to everyone that's participated, and use Rolling Hills Adult School to practice importing those templates, because these templates are designed to be used with the Rolling Hills tutorial database. So you can safely import that information using the third-party import wizard. Just please be sure to follow this recommendation or the import order. So teacher records need to exist first before you can import classes, and then students can you can pre-populate your database with student records, as well as automatically enroll students in classes through this class status import. You can add instructional hours to that information as well. The teacher import creates the personnel registration. and user account simultaneously. So this does, it's kind of like a 2-for-1 import, which is great. The class records assign the teachers here to the class. So it's not only creating the classes, which we will go into greater detail in the next workshop, but it's also assigning the teachers. And then the student records have to exist before you can enroll the students in the classes and add instructional hours, provide update information, and so forth. All right, folks, we actually are out of time and need to set up for the next workshop. I do appreciate your participation and hanging in there for these extra 10 minutes. We have another question here. Would the admin need to take the coordinator or proctor certification? No. No, to grant individuals access to the online database, they do not, if they are not serving in a coordinator or proctor role in e-tests, then they do not need to complete coordinator and or proctor certification. You folks can add any user to your online database. You can add administrators, principals, counselors, anyone to your TOPS Pro Enterprise database. This is why we give you examples of access groups for ease in managing user accounts. So if you've been with us through the workshop on adding user accounts, our standard recommendation on any user account is don't spend the time to enable on an individual basis. Don't spend the time to enable menu or access rights on individual accounts. Leave these in what we call an inherited status as represented by these shaded boxes. This is the recommendation. Just leave the user account as is. Fill in user identification here and fill in contact information. That's it. Save the record. And then put them in an access group that best aligns with their roles or the access in which you wish to grant them to your online database. So take a look at the rights and permissions assigned to these access groups, such as the basic access group is limited. Notice very limited check marks here on all of the menus, as well as in the data access rights. They don't have any editing functions whatsoever. They cannot create a record, update a record, or delete a record, but they can list records and they can view records and they can generate reports. So just to wrap this up, folks, the detailed information about access groups, you can find them either under, they happen to be under coordinator here, create access groups, or an TE help documentation, user accounts, and access groups. But primarily this creating access groups document clearly defines all of the menus and data functions assigned per access group. So manage your users through access groups. That includes teachers because there are several, there are access groups examples for teachers. Okay, so you saw when we added, say, I'll do Mary Smith as an example. Mary Smith. So Mary Smith, what we would do and is simply add her to, say, our teacher enhanced access group and add her and save her record. And I would put her email here. And actually edit her user account information and save that. Okay, folks, so I do need to end this workshop. Please join us for the next workshop because that goes hand in hand with my demonstration on personnel registrations. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you back in after a short break.